I started the free software movement. For freedom-respecting svobodny software. Because freedom is what makes life good. And if you're using computers and you're running software, you need your software to respect your freedom too. Otherwise, if you're running non-free software, it's an instrument for somebody else to have power over you. And which somebody? Whoever controls what's in that software. If you're running Apple software, well, Apple has power over you. If you're running some Google software, Google has power over you. If it happens to be Microsoft software, then Microsoft has power over you. And that's not right. Anyway, I'll give a talk this evening and say more, but this is a sort of interview with Amir Taaki.
Thank you very much, sir. So I just want to give a preamble. So this should be interactive. So feel free to,
throw things.
Yeah, throw things, join in, even come up if you want. And I just want to talk about the title. It says the economics of free software. So economics, it doesn't mean money. It comes from the ancient Greek, which means household management. And it concerns the well-being and needs to sustain life. In fact, the most contemporary definition of economics is the science which studies human behavior as a relationship between ends and scarce means, which can have many alternative uses. So you have a sought-after end, but there are scarce resources to achieve that sought-after end. So given the ends of technological freedom, of parallel infrastructure, of ownership by society, how do we reconcile that with the scarce means of developer focus, of actual resources, money, time, quality of life, those kind of things, and also community momentum to achieve maximal effect. So that's the kind of topic that I want to go more into, dig into. If you don't mind, I'd like to also give an introduction to you and why you are so important for the movement.
Okay, but I would like to mention I would not have chosen that title.
Okay. So in my life, there were 3 times where my mind was completely blown. And one of those was discovering Bitcoin. The third one was discovering zero knowledge proofs. But the first one was when I learned that you could change the operating system on your computer and that free software existed. And I was just a teenager and I was at school and one of my friends said, "Oh, you can change the operating system on your computer." And I was like, "What? Really?" He's like, "Oh, yeah, there's Windows and stuff. You can change that. There's another one called," and I'm sorry, we call it GNU Linux, but my friend actually said Linux. And I was like, "Oh, what's that?" And he's like, "Oh, it's an operating system and it's made by people all around the world. It's not owned by any company." I went home and I started to research and I started to watch videos. I saw the documentary Revolution OS. I saw Stallman. And I was so inspired, and I decided that I will dedicate my life to the free software movement. And that was the beginning of the path where I find that I am now. And I also want to give some historical context. So the computer revolution, the PC revolution, which Stallman very much was part of in the 80s, computers were these giant machines that were in the hands of industry and military. And
hackers like me.
Well, the hackers acquired that technology because they saw there was a tool of power, and they said, we need to bring that power to the people. And so they started to even get jobs as janitors and get access to these machines, learn how they work, and put them together in their garages. And people would share this software freely together because there was a mutual enterprise, a recognition of the importance of this mission. And that led to the development of the personal computer. But then what happened was this formerly marginalized computer that was very niche, community that was very niche, a ton of money started to flow in. Kind of like with crypto, like a ton of money flows in, people lose their morals. Everybody started to throw themselves at these companies, and the culture began to change completely. And everybody went along with it. But
not everybody.
Stallman was the guy that said no. He refused to do that. And, when I was 16, I literally wanted to be Stallman. I was like, when I grow up, I want to be Stallman. And I always wanted to have a beard to be like a hacker. But when I grew a beard, I ended up just looking like a Muslim terrorist, like an Al-Qaeda. Stallman is the reason many of us are here today. And I kind of liken him to the Diogenes of hackerdom. I want to tell a little story. We're going to replace Diogenes meets Alexander, the conqueror of Persia, the Macedonian, and we're going to replace Alexander with Elon Musk. So Elon Musk comes up to Stallman, and he says, "Stallman, I'm a great admirer of you. I truly yield to your greatness." And he says, "Stallman, I can offer you the heavens. What do you want from me?" And Stallman replies, "Look, you're in my metaphorical sunlight. I want you to just get out my way. I've got work to do."
No, that's not me.
I'm sorry to mischaracterize you, but
I might ask him for things that he wouldn't do.
True.
They'd be things that would affect people.
Yep.
And he, being what he is, doesn't want to do things that are good for other people, so he wouldn't do them. But I wouldn't waste that opportunity by something like get out of my light.
True. You are very perceptive and always have been.
Well, I'm a practical sort of philosopher. I see things that are unjust and bad, painful in the world, and I look for ways to try to make them better with whatever is at my disposal. And often it calls for more than that, so I ask other people, would you like to help? And of course, only a fraction help, but that's better than nothing. And so good things get done. I'm not at all interested in having the sun falling on me without anything to block it. In fact, that's a pain in the neck.
Yep.
I'd much rather say to somebody, "Hey, could you please stand over there? You'll give me some nice shade." But there are more important things than that to ask for, things that will help us have freedom. Sad to say, you can't expect Musk to help with anything good like that.
I will give the example of the phones. So, and in fact, it's not just phones, it's more general. Stallman has been, for many years, warning us of the dangers that are facing us with modern technologies. And in fact, rather than blaming Google and these companies that are like truly backing us into a corner that we have to fight to preserve whatever freedoms we have left. In fact, we get annoyed at Stallman. People go, "Oh, he's such a nuisance with his insistence on morals." There's an irony there. Anyway, I made a compendium. It's a very short 2-minute video of clips from the 80s talking about free software. And this is a gathering of hackers, and they're discussing the future of the personal computer. And they're talking about business and things like that. And Stallman says, he stands up in a crowd, and he makes a Giga Chad move, and he says, "I want to make all software free. That's my life goal." I want to play this video.
At the touch of a button, you can now correct a letter without retyping it, recalculate complex financial projections, or send electronic mail across the world. Hundreds of programs let you manage your money, draw on your screen, teach your kids to type, and play shoot-'em-ups or adventure games. But the real purpose of the get-together was to discuss the unique set of values that made the computer revolution possible and brainstorm about its future.
My political platform is that we need an electronic declaration of independence.
My project is to make all software free. Computers are sort of a fascinating build-it set where you can build things that you can then use to build more things. It allows you to put together structures that you couldn't have put together before and carry this on until you're making structures thousands of times as big.
Richard Stallman has been called the last pure hacker for choosing to remain at MIT despite the temptations of the commercial world, true to the spirit of the early hackers.
What they had in common was mainly love of excellence in programming. They wanted to make their programs that they used be as good as they could. They also wanted to make them do neat things. They wanted to be able to do something in a more exciting way than anyone believed possible and show, look how wonderful this is. I bet you didn't believe this could be done.
But today, hackers are divided between the old values and the new. They can't agree whether source codes, the basic blueprints of a program, should be shared or not.
Hackers frequently want to look at code, like operating system listings and the like, to learn how it was done before them, because this is how they're going to learn to do it. And source should be made available reasonably to those sort of people, not to copy, not to sell, but to learn from. Tools I will give away to anybody, but the product, that's my soul is in that product. I don't want anyone fooling with that. I don't want anyone hacking into that product and changing it, because then it won't be mine.
Imagine if you bought a house and the basement was locked and only the original building contractor had the key. If you needed to make any change, repair anything, you had to go to him. And if he was too busy doing something else, he'd tell you to get lost and you'd be stuck.
It's like somebody saying, looking at a painting and saying, well, I don't like that color over there, so I'll just take a can of paint and change it. That wrecks the whole painting, okay? That changes everything that I did. And that to me is one of the greatest insults.
You're at that person's mercy, and you become downtrodden and resigned. That's what happens when the blueprints to a computer program are kept secret by the organization that sells it. And that's the usual way things are done.
Yep. No. Maybe in the belly, but no.
Now, with that hat, that's nothing like me.
No.
Not my style.
Stallman, would you object if a few of us took a bow to you for your long
Yeah, I
service?
would. It would be bad for me.
Okay, we won't.
You know, nowadays, of course, I get tremendous amounts of irrational, misguided hatred. But I still get tremendous amounts of perhaps excessive admiration. And that puts me, I've learned to resist some of that influence. And I guess I need to keep practicing, it's true. But it's good for you. It's also good for you, instead of admiring me too much, admire good, justice, truth. Those are the things that are bigger than me. And they are good to admire.
Recently, you were cancelled.
What did you say?
So the people here, we're all big believers in free speech. And recently you were attacked. You were cancelled by people. Maybe you can talk a little bit about that. And
I don't want to go into details of that. But there is a website called stallmansupport.org that refutes many of the false parts of what people say about me. That site is not written by me. It's maintained by supporters and friends so as to correct some of the falsehoods that people spread when they want to do me dirt. The sad thing is a lot of people don't even bother to check. They see enough hostility at me and they become convinced that I'm a monster because their friends say so. And that has practical consequences about what I can achieve for causes like free software, justice in computing, freedom in computing, privacy. So I still do what I can.
So you create the free software movement, and when you first started it, a lot of people thought you were crazy. They were like, oh, you can't achieve that. And through your will, you created the operating system, the GNU Linux.
Well, actually, that's a bit of an oversimplification.
Please.
First, I wanted to make a world of software in which people could continue using computers and have freedom. At that time, the old free software world had pretty much sunk beneath the waves. There was very little left of it. And I didn't see anything useful to do with my programming skill except to try to create a new one. But I looked for the most practical plan, and that was to make a system similar to the existing Unix operating system. It was a non-free system, but I could see from the popularity it had in the computing field that it would be a good model to imitate. Also, because it was divided up into many separate components, I realized each component could be replaced compatibly by a different person or group of people. So these different parts could be developed in parallel around the world, and then we'd have all the parts we needed, so we'd have a complete replacement-free system. And that was the plan. And I started writing some of the central components we would need and asking for other people to start writing other components. And that's what happened. I announced it in September 1983. In January, I started working on it. And by 1992, in fact, we sort of barely had a complete system. Now, one of the pieces in that system was a kernel called Linux. It was first released in 91, but at that point it was under a non-free license, which meant it effectively didn't exist for us. A non-free program is of no value, no contribution or anything to the free world. But when its author re-released it under a free license, suddenly it became a part of the free world and could be included in an operating system, and there it was. We had a version of the GNU system. So it became possible to get a PC and install the GNU system, the form that had Linux as the kernel, and you could run it. At the beginning, it was hard. It took a few years before people made that a fairly easy thing for people to do, which was important. But the point is that it had become possible once again to get a computer, install a free operating system on it, and use it without software that was putting chains on you and giving others control over your computing. So that was great, but of course it doesn't end there. There's so many other things we want to do on our computers, and typically those things, when they're new, are presented by some company which has carefully arranged that if you want to get involved, you have to buckle on the chains, and then the company has these chains to pull on you with. So then we have to come along and try to make ways you can do those things without chains. And there's a lot of work to do, and there's plenty for you hackers to do to help.
So now these days, we see Microsoft and Google talking about open source. And the personal computing revolution in the 80s was like created by these hackers, these guerrilla hackers, but then corporations came in and kind of hijacked that, and the free culture was lost, and you revived it again, and it had momentum. But then as it started to grow, others started to talk about, well, we need to bring in big business, and we need to stop talking about freedom and values. And that was the origin of open source. And so why do big technology companies find that narrative so much more attractive than free software?
Oh, well, you have to understand what the term open source means in order to see why some use it and others of us don't. As you can see from the video, the idea of free software has to do with freedom for people who do computing. And that's been part of the free software movement all along. Of course, it's clearer if your language has a word that means free as in freedom and doesn't mean gratis. In English, we don't have one. It's too bad. If we'd had one, I'd probably have used it and things would have been clearer. But in Czech, you can say svobodný software. Because free software, that doesn't mean no one can ever sell a copy. We don't care if a copy is given in exchange for money or gratis. That's a side issue. We're concerned with whether that program respects users' freedom. So this is a matter of values. You saw someone in the video talking about how the program he wrote is his soul. Even when you are using that program, his soul has to have power over you. And, making sure that his soul is preserved intact is more important than your freedom. Well, those are the values we disagree with. And then there are others for whom the only value is, how much money can we get? And, well, we say there are things that we don't say it's wrong to make money, but there are more important things, and there are ways of making money that are bad, evil, unjust, etc. And you shouldn't be allowed to do those. And if the result is you don't make so much money, well, okay. So the free software movement has these values, but there were plenty of people in the 1990s in the free software community and the free software world who didn't particularly share these values, but they were involved in developing or promoting or using free software, which was okay. I mean, people in life have different ideas. And I certainly was not trying to say everyone has to agree with me. I wanted everyone to help us promote the use and development of free software. But you didn't have to agree with me to do that. So I am trying to find something in here that gets to be difficult. But here it is. So there were disagreements in the free software community in the 90s, disagreements between people with different values. There were people who wanted most to be successful and to make money, but they were going along with the free software community because it fit in. Okay, but they didn't agree with me about what the whole thing was about. So in 1998, some of them got together and coined a different term, open source, which they preferred because it could be disconnected from the values that I had brought into the free software movement. Values that they didn't share. And that's what open source has been ever since. It's been a way of talking about more or less the same collection of programs, but with different values pervading what you say. So you'll notice, if you look at what people say in the name of open source, that the values tend to be convenience, success, and getting people to cooperate in development. Now, for the free software movement, we fight for people to have the right to change the programs that they use and to pass those on, and so that other people can work on it, and for groups to work together in doing this, the freedom to work together in changing the software. We don't think it's terribly important whether this particular program here was written by a collaboration. What's important is for the future. In the future, you and your friends should be free to collaborate on making it do what you want. So for us, it's the freedom to collaborate on working on the software. Whereas they, open source supporters, may focus more on the fact that people did collaborate in writing this code here. And I think that's fine, but what's important is what freedom we do or don't have. So these are we're looking at the same question, but from different angles. So the point is that they've structured the philosophy of open source such that it doesn't criticize or condemn non-free software. Open source supporters never say, that program is no good because it's closed source. It's treating us wrong. Because they don't think that, they don't want people to think that, so they never ask the question. Whereas for the free software movement, the most important question is, why is it not good for society if a program is non-free? So you get these two different philosophies disagreeing, and they've been disagreeing ever since then. But what makes it hard to talk about this, especially for us, is that lots of people spread misinformation. For instance, I think that more people will tell you that I am an open source advocate, which is false, than will tell you that I disagree with open source, which is the truth. Most people have never heard of free software, the free software movement, and so the only thing they've heard about me is connecting me with open source, and so that's what they'll tell you. Boy, is that a pain. How do I tell people, how do I promote the cause I stand for when most people are saying that I support the opposite? Opposite's a bit too strong, but within this particular dispute, it's the other side.
Sorry. So we fast forward a bit to today, and today on one side we have neoliberalism, big tech, surveillance capitalism, and the other side, the side of freedom, we have free software. And increasingly, the users are becoming farm animals, either through harvesting their data, and even the production of the phone. It's a device which is good for consuming, but not for production. It's not oriented towards production. So would you say that the utility of a technology is linked to its ability for groups of people or communities to collaborate and work together?
Well, I don't know. I mean, I have to say, I get the impression that there are lots of communities of people who work together by communicating with each other through snoop phones. Now, I'm not going to have a snoop phone because the surveillance makes me too angry to consider tolerating one, but I can't claim that it's never used to do anything good.
Yeah, but in the sense that we have these platforms like Google Docs, but still a lot of the paradigm of computing is that there is a user and there is a company delivering content.
Well,
to that
actually,
user.
well, please, let's not call it content. I mean,
Okay.
I don't refer to things that people write or publish or as, quote, content, unquote, because that term embodies the values of somebody who's a shareholder in a publishing business of some kind and wants the business to have lots of works that it's selling somehow, and what they are individually doesn't matter. So it's a way of looking at the things that people write, draw, sing, or whatever, only in terms of what money can be made from them. And I don't like those values. I'd rather not look at a novel, a memoir, a textbook, or whatever, a song, whatever. I don't want to look at it that way. I'd rather look at each one of them as a work that has some value in itself, independent of the fact that one could make money from it. The word content, it suggests that there's a box, and what's important is to keep that box full of whatever. And the individual things that are in the box don't matter except that they help keep the box full. And I think that if we use that term, that those values will rub off on us. So I think it is wise for us to refuse to use that term. Anyway, what was the question you asked? I tend to talk about the terms that people use because I think the values in them are very important, but then I get distracted.
It was if a technology helps a group of or a community in society to mobilize, to work together to satisfy their needs, is that the measure of a utility of the technology?
Well, it's one measure, but whether the technology that people have chosen respects their freedom is another measure, and whether it requires people to trash their freedom to join in is another. So there are political causes I support, and sometimes I would like to go to a rally, and I can't find where it is because the websites that they've set up to tell people require you to run non-free software to see where and what time the rally is. And I can't find out. I try to convince them, please put on your site a simple page of HTML that says, country by country, state by state, city by city, the time and place of the rally you're going to have. This is something that anybody could look through and doesn't need to run the non-free JavaScript programs that they're trying to run in people's browsers. And they'd have no time to even think about it. So what that means is, for reasons of conscience, I can't direct people to their site. I can't tell people, please join this rally, it's an important cause, and I can't go there myself. It pains me terribly when they do this. And it's all because they don't care about the issue of software freedom. They should. They're focusing on some cause. I'm focusing on some cause. These two causes do not conflict. We could each focus on one cause while paying a little attention not to do harm to the other cause. We could do this for each other, and it would be good for all the good causes. I wish I could find how to get them to pay a little attention, just enough so that they wouldn't be working against justice in computing.
You were part of the personal computer revolution, and the hackers, they birthed the personal computer, and
They what? The what?
they gave birth to.
Oh, they did? Well, I don't know. I mean, I had nothing to do with personal computers until around 1990.
Yep. And
They were too weak. Personal computers got to be powerful enough to run a system like GNU around 1990-ish.
and then also crackers, they were breaking into computer networks, and so it felt like the technologists or the hackers who were socially and politically motivated had great power. But today, it's almost like we're on the defensive. We have to hack our own devices just to avoid being spied on by the system. And I want to know, what do you think were the, I mean, maybe it's too abstract, but I'm curious for you, how do you perceive the conceptual successes of the computing revolution that you saw as breakthrough? What ideas?
I don't
were
think
very
about that. I'm
different?
sorry, I just don't think about that question. I've got nothing to say about it. It's a question I don't ask myself.
Well, I'm curious, what's your analysis
Never did.
of computing and what caused that change and what was the important
That
ideas?
question is not clear to me. I wouldn't know. I don't know how to wrap my mind around that.
Okay.
Is this a question about the development of basic computing technology?
Well, there was a different paradigm before, and then there was a new paradigm.
I don't know.
Okay.
I mean, I know what I lived through.
Yeah, what you lived through. What did you see as the big shifts in ideas that were occurring at that time?
I don't know. You see, in the early years of my involvement in computing, of course, any computer that you could do anything with did not belong to an individual. It belonged to some organization. And if I was allowed to use it, it belonged to a school or a lab. And for some reason, the school or lab would let me write programs on it, sometimes because I was writing programs that the lab wanted. At MIT, at the Artificial Intelligence Lab, I and the other system hackers, we were on the staff. And of course, we tried to write programs that the others in the lab would find useful. And sometimes we would write something just because it seemed like a fun idea. But, and that seemed fine to me. I had no particular wish to own a computer myself back then. I was totally happy working on a multi-million-dollar computer that the lab had got because it was funded by the Defense Department. But what did matter to me was what we were doing with it. And we weren't doing anything that I thought was particularly bad. We weren't doing anything that was directly related to military activities, for instance. Now, some people at the lab in the 1970s, which was, of course, the time of the Vietnam War, some were felt very uncomfortable with the fact that the lab's funding came from DARPA. But I pointed out funding that DARPA let us release everything we did. Whereas if we had funding from business instead, the business would have tried to make our work proprietary, and that would have been far worse. And it turned out to be far worse later.
Mm-hmm. Can you also explain why is the cloud so
There is
dangerous?
no cloud. There's no such thing.
Just to finish the question, people would say, oh, but it enables people to collaborate.
There isn't an it.
Surely it's a good thing. Maybe you can
totally misguided.
Deconstruct.
No,
this.
that's why I burst in, because
please.
To quote the cloud, unquote, is confusion.
Yep.
It doesn't mean anything in clarity. It's only confusion. It doesn't matter if you treat it as something that exists. It doesn't matter what you say about it. You're already spreading confusion. And if you don't want to spread confusion, you've got to take that term out of your discourse and never refer to it except in quotation marks.
Yeah, that was
saying there is no such, no, they can't be implicit. That doesn't work.
okay.
You can fool yourself and thinking that you're criticizing the term, but if you use that term, if it sounds in your sentences that it's meant to refer to some part of reality, you're already spreading the confusion, and the details can't change that. The only way to avoid spreading that is to say, there's no such thing as a cloud. It's nothing but confusion. Let's look at what really exists. What really exists are various servers that users can connect to and talk with, and they do various different things. And the idea that these servers are the cloud is a mistake. So if somebody says your data will be in the cloud, what that means is somebody's trying to pull the wool over your eyes, basically, or pull a cloud over your eyes. So ask, what servers will this data go to? Who owns these servers? Are they all owned by your company? Will any of these data ever go to servers owned by other companies or by governments? Which countries are these servers in? Which countries' laws govern them? Now you're starting to get to the details that make a big difference to whether that system is going to mistreat you or not. The things they don't want you to ask about. That's what the term, quote, the cloud, unquote, is for. It's to cause people to see some sort of blurred thing with no details and not raise these questions. And there are various different things that servers can be used for. Often it means basically you connect your browser to somebody's server, it gets lots of data from you, sends it to other servers, maybe to servers in other companies located in various countries around the world, and they don't even know what's going to happen to all that data, let alone have any wish to tell you. And the usual best thing to say is, I don't want you to get any data. Get lost. One of my rules is, when I buy something, I pay cash and I don't say who I am.
You very nicely elucidated the issues or problems with that computing paradigm that is being pushed by big tech companies like Google, Microsoft, Facebook. I also, the early success of Unix, I feel, and I'd be interested to be corrected if I'm wrong, was its ability to network computers and to achieve scale through...
I don't know what achieve scale means, I'm afraid. That's too vague for me. Unix did have a kind of networking based on phone calls. And that was used for various things. And one thing it was used for was net news. You could post an article in a news group, and it would get propagated from one computer to other computers to others, and eventually it would reach all the computers that were part of Usenet. And news groups could be about any topic, and so if your computer had a connection to Usenet, you could post things under various topics, and they would... Each article would get copied from one machine to others, to others, to others. Each machine would knew certain other machines, and it would receive articles from some of them and send them back out to the rest. It was a nice thing. It was pre-internet. This was for computers that weren't on the internet. They could talk to each other only by making modem calls to each other.
So I was recently using a software called Jitsi, which is a free software that enables you to make internet calls with people. And a lot of free software projects, it seems, are trying to provide alternatives to these big tech software like Google Docs and so on. But the way that they do it is by you have to run your own server. And in the case of Jitsi, I think they weren't making money, so the server just kind of went offline, and now people are like, oh, and and what these companies like Google and stuff do is they run this infrastructure, and of course you're paying in terms of giving your data away. But I'm curious if you see a role for peer-to-peer technologies like BitTorrent. And
I am in favor of peer-to-peer systems for people to communicate with each other and collaborate. But I'm not against server-based technologies.
Yeah.
It's just that, yeah, you may need to set up a server or have some friends who set up a server.
But do you think maybe we can also use, we can create, instead of having servers, we can use peer-to-peer technologies, and we can use...
It's too broad a question. It's too broad a question to be meaningful.
Let me finish.
Yeah.
Okay. Could there be a role for cryptocurrency to provision infrastructure for services?
I have no idea. I do not lean towards cryptocurrency.
Yep.
And I tend to think that trying to design global systems to pay for global cooperations of machines working together, I'm skeptical of. I don't think we need that sort of scale. In my community, well, we have servers when we need to. They don't need to be giant servers. They don't need to have thousands of people connected to them. So we have, they don't need to be so big, and they're not so expensive, and so on.
Can I just give you an example and get your feedback? So, for example, in the Tor project, they have to run these servers, and they're quite expensive in terms of bandwidth and resources. And not only that, running the servers comes with a lot of liability in the sense that states will kind of go or try and hassle you, basically. But then there's another project, which is actually by Harry Halpin, which is the NIM project. And they're trying to create a mixed-net system, or they've created it. And essentially, by running one of these servers, when people route their traffic through a server that you're running, you get micropayments. So you recoup some of that cost of running the server.
To me,
it also incentivizes people to
I'm not against it, but it does make me worry about one thing. If I wanted to use this, how would I ever get that kind of currency to make micropayments in?
So there's
because I don't do that kind of thing.
So one is that if you want to use it for free, you can, but your traffic will just go slower because you get some of the free service. And also to get the currency, you can get any cryptocurrency, which you can obtain by cash.
Yeah, but I don't know how to do that.
There's ATM machines in every city. You go to ATM machine without ID, and you can put cash in and get cryptocurrency. And then you can exchange it on many services. And then you get their token, and you can use it to use the service, to operate the service. So I was just curious if you think that by combining peer-to-peer crypto,
it's too far outside of what I do for me to have any opinion about any details of it.
And
you said that there are these ATM machines, and you said something about ID. Maybe there was a part of it I didn't hear. I don't understand.
So there's ATM machine in every city. Well, there's many actually. and you go there, often they don't require ID.
I hope so, because
Yeah.
if they did, I wouldn't.
Well, in
Certainly wouldn't.
Switzerland, for example, I don't need any ID. And you put cash in directly, and you just scan your wallet on your computer or your phone or a piece of paper, and you obtain some of this anonymous currency. And then you can use that to access services in the internet. That's one method. Another is peer-to-peer through other people, etc.
To me, it sounds like a very complicated question. What the implications of such a system would be in practice for people's anonymity. And so I would be slow to feel confident about any conclusions about it.
Okay. And right now in cryptocurrency community, there's a lot of new technology, new cryptography being created, and it's growing a lot with many projects. How can we create more cross collaboration between the free software community, cryptocurrency community, other communities?
I don't know. I mean, as far as I know, most cryptocurrency implementations are free software. Right?
Yes, they are.
But the community I come from, the one I built, is a community of building useful programs to do jobs for a few people to do together. It's not, a thing that says, let's get something going where millions of people will run this program. That's not the way I generally think. There may be millions of people using some program I wrote, but it didn't depend on being used by millions of people all together. It's just, it's being used by, if this person wants to use it, okay, person can. If that person wants to use it, well, that's possible too. And if they end up being a million different people, each doing per own thing, or groups of 5 or 100 doing something together, okay, it's all decentralized in that way, but not decentralized with a single organization going through them all, because they don't have that. It's more decentralized and less organized than that. So that's what I think about in computing. I like the Tor network. I approve of it and I use it, but it's not part of the sort of thing I ever think about how to make.
I very much grew up in and come from the free software GNU community, but I was also instrumental in the rise of the cryptocurrency community. You were at the Bitcoin 2012 conference in London, which I organized, and I just see that in cryptocurrency there's a tremendous amount of value that's being created. And what I see in free software community is often there is a lot of opposition which comes from ignorance, and it's kind of conservative. And I just see that that together, if they were possible to create more collaboration, cross collaboration, then because we have a very big task ahead, which is this big tech surveillance paradigm, and I feel like the values often meet very closely, but there's for some reason there's not much collaboration happening.
Well, I have a different approach. I pay cash.
Yep.
It's simple. I don't do digital payments of any kind. And what are the things I would want to make payments for? Well, mostly they're bills. I get an electricity bill and a gas bill and an internet connection bill. Those are the things I have to pay.
But I wonder if you have any thoughts about, okay, where are areas of concern that we could start, because many people here are free software advocates as well, like that we could start looking into free software and go, okay, we have...
I don't know.
For example, telephony is something maybe we can create a decentralized telephony network?
Well, we do have GNU Jammy, which is free software for talking to each other. It avoids using any central server, but there are servers that it uses for finding someone that you want to talk with. And aside from that, the communications don't go through servers.
You also have GNU Taler. Maybe you can describe that.
GNU Taler is a payment system. It's a system for paying anonymously, but the payee is always identified. One thing we wanted to do when we started designing this was to make it quite different from cryptocurrencies. One thing is we didn't want currency speculation. I hate currency. I'm not at all attracted by the idea of getting some sort of digital coin whose value might fluctuate. I don't like that kind of investing. I'm afraid it'll fluctuate to zero. And I don't invest in things, I don't put my money into things that I'm worried are going to disappear. I guess partly that's because I don't have a background in a country whose currency disappeared. So I tend to feel safer with that. I guess if I had grown up in Germany in the 1920s, I might have felt no confidence in my country's currency, but I didn't. So anyway, Taler payments are denominated in some other currency that comes from the outside. Usually would be the currency of whatever country you're doing this in. The next thing is the payer is anonymized through blind signatures. So you get Taler tokens from some central organization, and it has to sign them, but it doesn't know what number it signed. So later on when you spend the token, it can't connect that token that was spent with you or with the operation you did to get the token. Anyway, if you want to find the details, look at taler.net. But the thing is, when you make the payment, you hand over these tokens to whoever you're paying the money to, and the payee then has to hand them over to the same bank or the central organization that makes Taler tokens, which will validate them, and that's how the payee actually gets money. So this is a crucial design decision. It's anonymous for the payer, but it is not anonymous for the payee. And the idea is that the payee is usually some business that is supposed to pay tax, and we don't want to help those businesses evade tax. In fact, hiding wealth is one of the disastrous economic problems of the world today. It's a way that a lot of wealth gets shifted over to the rich. And the biggest overall economic problem of the world today is the rich get a bigger and bigger share of everything, and all the rest of us get less and less. This is one aspect of plutocratist government. And we didn't want to help that. We want to contribute to making the rich pay their taxes. So Taler is not designed to be easy to use for paying millions of dollars. No, it's meant for people to pay the sort of sums of money people are usually paying, and doing so anonymously, just as you could do if you pay cash.
We're coming up to the last 10, 15 minutes. I open it to questions from the audience.
I have a question.
Yep.
Mr. Stallman, thank you so much for all your work. You've spent your life fighting for freedom in a time where freedom is being increasingly taken away through surveillance. I'm wondering, are you optimistic about the future of free software?
I'm never optimistic. It's just my nature. I see things that can go wrong, and I see powerful enemies. So I tend to feel discouraged. I just don't give up, because giving up is useless. All you can achieve by giving up is defeat. So you got to keep fighting, whether it looks like you can win or not.
Thank you, Stallman, for being here with us. I was wondering what strategies and tactics you found impactful in propagating the values of and sustaining the free software movement.
Well, I present these issues in terms of values, because the values are what ultimately count to anybody. People have different values, and those differences are the issues that we really need to discuss. What are the values that matter? Is wealth what should matter to you? Is freedom for you and for others what should matter to you? Is working together to avoid bad things happening to society something that you want to be part of? Or do you want to just sabotage it the way many people do? So these values apply across the board in life. Software is just one area which I work in because that's what my talent is in.
Since you care about freedoms...
Louder, please.
Thanks. Since you care about freedoms, the monetary instruments in many countries are the main slavery instrument. And
I don't know what that means even.
like
I hear you say it, but I don't know what it would mean if it's true.
Through inflation, for example. So
What?
dollars solve like payment method, but it doesn't solve, at least to me, I see it as like just propagating another mean of payment of the state money. But don't you think we should also have some free money for that respect people's freedom?
Your words include many assumptions that I don't understand, and I don't know if I agree with any of them. So it would be hard for me to say anything responding directly to what you said. It is definitely true that governments, to a large extent, serve the rich, and rich demand changes in laws to direct more and more of the society's wealth and production to the rich. And that is why things, basically, that's why things get worse and worse for the non-rich. But I'm not convinced by the claim that some narrower part of this, like monetary systems, are the cause. Now, there certainly are aspects about them, you know, how much of the wealth made by business activity goes to shareholders, how much goes to executives, and how much goes to workers. Well, we know which direction that's been pushed, but partly that's because of changes in laws about unions. Now, those laws about unions have nothing to do with monetary systems, but they're tremendously effective. How much does the government spend on medical treatment? How strongly does it support a national medical system that gives everybody good medical care? Or is it hollowing out that system and making it less and less effective? I know in at least 2 countries where things have been getting worse. But when they get worse, it's because of government decisions that could have been decided otherwise. And they're decided the way they are because rich people have enough power to say, give more to us. And they could do this regardless of how monetary systems function. So I don't agree that something about money is automatically going to do this. I'd say it's because the rich people have control over politics.
So you have referred to the rich and the rich people, but who are the rich people? Who are they? Because by many standards in many countries, you could be considered the rich because you live in a first world country. So who are the rich? Who are they?
The rich people are the people who, through their wealth, dominate the politics of whichever country we're talking about. I'm not rich by US standards, and I don't have particular political influence. I do donate, though, to candidates. I do that, of course, I do that because I want to see the U.S. government put more of its resources into the non-rich people's needs. I support progressive candidates.
Just back to your mention about using cash whenever possible. I think it's a great thing for today, especially when we can use cash. But we're rapidly seeing countries all across the globe become entirely cashless or migrate away from cash as much as possible.
Actually, that's an exaggeration. That's a despair exaggeration. In fact, one country which I read about more than most is the UK, because I tend to read The Guardian. And what I've read is that more and more people there are fighting back and demanding to be allowed to use cash. Because, and of course, few of them are doing this because they object to the surveillance of digital payments, but they have practical problems like they're disabled and they can't get to a place they can get any cash. They can't go to stores that will take their cash. And they're complaining loudly. And obviously what they should do is demand laws requiring stores to accept cash. Demand laws requiring there to be an ATM in every town. The point is, once people realize they want to pay cash, they should forcibly put a stop to getting rid of it. New York City passed a law a few years ago requiring places that sell food to accept cash. And I celebrated that.
So I would like to turn back a little bit towards software and freedom. So in the cryptography community in general and in the cryptocurrency community in particular, free software and open source is necessary but insufficient for the particular task of being confident that a piece of software does exactly what I expect it to do. So obviously being able to inspect the source and modify if I find a bug and contribute it back and so on is absolutely necessary, but it's insufficient. And
I don't understand what you just said.
Let me explain. So there's another thing that hampers that, and that's accidental complexity. So basically, if I have a regular personal computer with a GNU Linux system installed on it, it's so huge and complex that even though all of the source code is available, it's just so tremendously complex that there's necessarily is going to be a bug, by which I mean that it doesn't do exactly what its creators and users expect it to do.
Yeah, that's normal.
And, yeah, that's normal, exactly. But what I would like to hear your opinion about is whether there is some way to encourage kind of going back to the original GNU and Unix philosophy of small modules that provably do one thing and do it well, because I think that we're moving away from it, even in the free software community.
I think you're mistaken. I think we never started from there. I never endorsed that Unix philosophy. I was not interested in proving anything about what the programs did. I wanted to make them work in practice, and work in practice means we fixed bugs. Of course there were always bugs. There were lots of features, and there were lots of features because we wanted lots of features. So basically, I just never agreed with that because the goal I had was different. You want something, you want an entire system which is so simple that people can prove it will do some particular thing correctly. And I can see how for some purposes that might be useful. But my purposes weren't in that direction. I wanted a system that would do all the things I wanted it to do, which meant it would be big and complicated, and we would fix the bugs until it worked. And so I'm happy with that. I never wanted to go in the Unix philosophy direction, and that's why I didn't.
Last question from Mario.
Yeah, thank you so much. I was supposed to ask the last question, and actually I was going to ask about Unix philosophy and how it goes with free software or whether or not, but you kind of answered that. And we are out of time, so I just wanted to say congratulations to the 40 years of GNU. I haven't had a chance to say that, so yeah, Richard, yeah, all the best. Congratulations.
Ladies and gentlemen,
40 years of GNU.
Giga Chad Stallman.